the rioters made it into the Capitol and cut off our access routes. So Capitol Police weren't able to actually evacuate us, so they barricaded us within the House floor. They locked the doors and actually started to pile furniture up against the doors and windows and pulled their guns out. So there was about a group of about 15 or 20 members who were trapped in there as we were surrounded by rioters who were trying to ram and break down the doors and break through the glass.
That was Congressman Jason Crow on January 6th, reacting in real time to his own experience and the trauma everyone there experienced. He was speaking with us, I believe with my colleague Rachel Maddow, moments after being trapped in the House gallery of the U.S. Capitol. Now, more than 2.5 years later, yesterday's indictment serves as yet another reminder of the ex-president's divisive, dangerous actions and inaction that led to that deadly violence that day. The indictment laying out just how the ex-president exploited the mob and the chaos of the day, that about 2 hours after the mob first entered the Capitol, now defendant Trump, quote, joined others in the outer Oval Office to watch the attack on the Capitol on television. And he said this, quote, see, this is what happens when they try to steal an election. These people are angry. These people are really angry about it. This is what happens, end quote. Joining our conversation, Congressman Jason Crow of Colorado. Congressman, thank you for being here. One thing I've asked Barry and Andrew about is this basic tenet of recidivism in the law, that if someone keeps doing something over and over again, I mean, that's how sometimes flawed policies come into place, right? A maximum number of offenses or things that are very much under review and debated. But one of the basic theories is that if someone is getting more and more brazen, their acts are not being addressed. And I wonder what you think when you read the brazen acts of insurrection, of conspiracy to defraud the country, of his role in plotting the fake elector slate, of knowing exactly how many states he needed to flip and being hands-on with the fake slates of electors in every one of them.
Well, Nicole, you know, I've known Donald Trump. I've been around him. I've been in Congress almost 5 years now. So I've had a lot of experience dealing with Donald Trump. And we have a lot of history as a country dealing with him now. He has proven to all of us, not just Congress, but to the American people, who he is. This is an ill man. This is a deeply deranged man, somebody with sociopathic and psychopathic tendencies. I mean, you read that quote that you just read to us, and other statements that Donald Trump has made to other folks, you know, around January 6th. This is somebody who is incapable of empathy, incapable of compassion, and will do anything up to including inciting violence to achieve his end. So he's extremely dangerous, and this next step towards justice, this next indictment, needed to happen.
The indictment doesn't charge anyone other than Donald Trump, but there is a lot of narrative description of Trump's reliance on his Republican allies in Congress. Do you think there will ever be any accountability for them?
I don't know, Nicole. It's too early to tell. There are co-conspirators that are named in the indictments. There are other criminal proceedings that are moving forward. I just want to see accountability for people who broke the law. I don't want any predetermined outcomes here, because that's not what's in the best interest of our country. That's not how the rule of law should work. We actually just need to follow the facts and see where the evidence leads. And if the evidence leads to people that committed the law, then they should be held accountable. It's very simple.
Something else that was so simple as we watched it, but seeing it in black and white is just harrowing, is the call and action that impacted the security measures taken to protect the life of the vice president, Trump's number 2, and his family. Let me read you this from the indictment, page 40. At 2:24 p.m., after advisors had left the defendant, that's Donald Trump, alone in his dining room, the defendant, Donald Trump, issued a tweet intended to further delay and obstruct the certification. Quote, Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what should have been done to protect our country and our Constitution, giving states a chance to certify a corrected set of facts, not the fraudulent or inaccurate ones, which they were asked to previously certify. USA demands the truth, exclamation point. 1 minute later, at 2:25 p.m., the United States Secret Service was forced to evacuate the vice president to a secure location. At the Capitol throughout the afternoon, members of the crowd chanted, quote, hang Mike Pence, where's Pence? Bring him out, traitor, Pence. The defendant repeatedly refused to approve a message directing rioters to leave the Capitol. There's real depravity here in the enthusiasm for the violence that he incited. What is the correct remedy for that?
The correct remedy is whatever the law prescribes. It has to lead to, the facts have to lead to an indictment or the legal process as we're seeing it play out. A grand jury will decide that. And I think this is a really important point. There's all these accusations by Trump supporters that this is a political process. Grand juries indict. This is a jury just like any other jury. When people get those jury notices in the mail box and they open them up and they show up for jury duty, a certain number of those folks are taken and put onto a grand jury, just like everybody else. There's nothing different or special about these people. These are regular people just like you and me who have been put on these juries, and they are the ones that decide to indict. Much like if there's a trial here, they will be the ones that will stand in judgment of Donald Trump, not elected officials, not politicians. That's the way it should happen. But there is depravity here. And let's not forget, for all the threats against people like Pence, there was real brutality and real damage. Hundreds of police officers were brutally beaten. Over 100 were seriously injured. A police officer was killed. That was because Donald Trump incited this mob. Full stop.
I have the privilege of speaking to one of those officers. He makes clear he doesn't speak for all of them. But it's clear for Harry Dunn, who's received awards from this president, to obviously as a platform to share the experience. And he's a really important voice calling for accountability. There's no sort of process solution. The trauma is real and it's forever. And I wonder what you think the impact is on real victims, people like Harry Dunn and people like your staff or yourself, to watch the process play out like it's clearly going to play out. That on the right, fortify the protections around the BS defenses that aren't even legal in nature. They're purely political, and throw sand in the gears of the wheels of justice and truth.
But there's a lot of different victims here, Nicole. There was the police officer who was killed. There were over 100 police officers who were brutally beaten, some of whom have terrible injuries. There were police officers who took their own lives in the weeks and months after January 6th because of the trauma. Then there were the voters. The American people were victimized here, too. The people who cast their vote in this election, the voters of the country who Donald Trump tried to disregard and throw their votes out in a fraudulent way, they were victimized too. So there are so many different layers of victims involved in what Donald Trump did, his big lie, and they all deserve accountability of some sort. So that's why we're going through this process. That's why a grand jury will sit here and look at the rest of the evidence, and that's why ultimately there will be a jury that will sit in judgment of Donald Trump.